I'm a really terrible snorer, and it drives my wife crazy because she's a really light sleeper. She will often move to the guest bedroom in the middle of the night because of this. I also have a habit of falling asleep on our couch if we're watching TV late, and she will eventually turn off the TV and head to bed before me, letting me sleep on the couch. I'll usually wake up at around 1 or 2 in the morning and sleepily head to the bed. One night, a few months ago, we were watching TV downstairs, and I had grabbed a pillow from our bed. The couch pillows are not particularly comfortable. I drifted off and woke up alone, in the dark, with the TV off, a little after 2 a.m. When I got upstairs, I crawled into bed next to my wife, who rolled over as I pulled back the covers on my side. But I realized my pillow was still downstairs on the couch. Instead of going back downstairs, I decided to get one from the guest bedroom. It was dark, but I knew my way around and felt my way to get the pillow. When I yanked it off the bed, I heard a "hey," and there was my wife with her earplugs in that she often wore because of my snoring. But she was also in our bed seconds earlier, which was strange. I was shocked and stood there to let my eyes adjust, and sure enough, she was there looking up at me with this annoyed, sleepy face. I dropped the pillow and walked back to our bedroom, and the strange part was that she was there curled up asleep again. I was utterly confused and freaking out just a little bit, and then I went back to the guest bedroom. However, when I returned back there, I didn't find anybody. Nobody was there. I now wonder if I was half asleep and probably dreaming while I was standing up or something strange like that. I have no explanation, and whenever I go upstairs now, if it's late and I fall asleep on the couch, I always have this sense of dread, and I always have to check the guest bedroom before I go to my bedroom to make sure that nobody's in there. It's very creepy, and I always get the sense that somebody's watching me. So I've been living in the same apartment and working in the same building for about 10 years, and I took the same route to work and back home every day. One day I was driving to work, and there was 3 huge cell towers right next to the road that had never been there before. There was also some new buildings that hadn't been there before either. I was baffled how all of that could have just gone up in one day. I sort of shrugged it off, thinking maybe I just didn't notice them going up. I felt so strange though, like things just didn't feel right, and I didn't belong. I worked for the day, and driving home, I saw the cell towers in the buildings again. Everything still seemed a little off though. The next morning, I was driving to work, and the cell towers and buildings weren't there again. It wasn't cloudy or anything. I would have been able to see them, but I didn't. This really freaked me out, and I had to pull over for a few minutes to calm myself down. I was wondering if I was losing my mind or something. I don't have any conditions though, other than a couple of bouts of depression and anxiety here and there. I continue to go to work, and sure enough, the cell towers in the new buildings still weren't there. I didn't know what to think, and I was just thinking about life as usual. A few days later, the cell towers and buildings reappeared, seemingly overnight again, and then disappeared again the next day. At that point, I was really worried something was terribly wrong with me. I moved to a new apartment not long after on the other side of town, so I no longer took the same way to get to work. That was about 10 years ago. I was back on my old side of town a couple of months ago, and the cell towers and the new buildings are all there. I was back in that area a couple of weeks ago, and they were still there, so I guess they're permanent now. I have no explanation, though. Was I seeing a glimpse of the future? Or was I seeing into some kind of different reality where those things already existed and then they didn't, and then they did again? I have no idea. This happened in January of 2015. I was pregnant with our first son. My ex-husband woke me up extremely excited. Manic, you could say. "Where were you, and what in the world?" he yelled. It was no later than 4 a.m., and immediately started an argument, which ended with me not really remembering going to bed the night before. Talking more about it, I realized an extra 2 days have passed, and I don't remember days of the week. And I had a complete blackout. The last thing that I remembered was throwing leftovers from the food we ordered for dinner. It was about 7 p.m., and the ex-husband went to get his car back from the mechanic. He said I okayed him using Uber for my phone, but I can't recall that. After coming back, I was nowhere to be found. My keys, wallet, and phone were there, but I was gone. He immediately went to the only neighbor we used to hang out with at the time, but I wasn't there either. He waited for a few more hours and he called the police. The hospital kept on calling as I'm a nurse and that's where I work. Friends that I had made plans with also called, and no one had any idea where I was. On the third day, I just appeared in our bed in my pajamas. The door was locked and the ex-husband didn't even sleep. He was drinking and walking around the house all night. I didn't lose my job and we had no problems with the authorities, but to this day I can't figure out what could have happened or where I went. This is my first time posting something like this, but this seriously freaked me out and I wanted to post it somewhere. My boyfriend and I have a tradition where we'll meet at a Sheetz and get curly fries and a milkshake together, then sit in the car and listen to music. His workplace is only about a minute's drive from the Sheetz we go to, so we meet there after his shift typically. We decided to meet up last night as usual, and I had just arrived there after 8 p.m. and I pulled into the parking lot. I saw his car and parked in the spot right next to him, fully expecting to look at him through the window and see him laughing at my terrible parking. I turned and looked at him through the window, and we locked eyes for a moment until I watched him back out of his spot and drive to the exit of the parking lot. I watched him stop at the stop sign and then drive away on the route he always takes to go home, and I sat there extremely confused. I checked my phone for a text in case maybe something had come up and he needed to go home, but I had no message from him at all. I started to panic just a little bit, wondering if I had done something wrong or maybe he was upset with me for some reason, but even then, he's not the type to just leave like that. I sat in my car for a few minutes deciding to text him. All I sent him was, before he replied, "I'm here." I was even more confused. I know I had seen him leave. I saw him in his car wearing the purple shirt and the hat that he'd been wearing all day. And I saw his license plates. It's a 4-letter word, so it's easy to memorize. I know that I had seen him just leave. I watched him just go out of the parking lot and take the route to go home. So there was no way that he could have pulled back into the parking lot without me seeing him. It would have been impossible. He told me to meet him inside, and sure enough, there he was at the door, heading into the building. I was pretty startled, and I still am because I know for a fact that I watched him look at me through the window and then leave. I told him what happened, and after that we both just laughed it off, but I can't help keep feeling weird about it. I can't imagine how somebody else could look exactly like my boyfriend and have the same car and license plates with that. I don't know what happened, and I'm a bit worried I hallucinated it or something. But yeah, that's my glitch story. So, I have pet birds that stay in my mother's room. The bird that I believe glitched is named Coco. So on one side of the room we have a small white cage Coco and his friends hang out on. On the other side of the room we have a shoe rack on the closet door that the birds play on. Right smack in the middle of the room is the fan. So my bird Coco is on the small white cage. Then he flies onto the fan. I blink for just a second and suddenly he was on the shoe rack. I know this can easily be explained by saying, well, he just flew fast. But we didn't see or even hear him fly. We always can hear them fly across the room because they're not quiet and they make a lot of noise. It didn't even look like he had just landed when I saw him. It's almost like he teleported to the shoe rack. This even made my mom wonder and go, what the hell? She was in the room with me when this happened too. I've been a believer in the computer simulation theory for a while now, but holy crap, I've never experienced something like this before. It seems like something really, really small and insignificant, however, it blew me away. This happened about 7 months ago. I lived in Boston, Massachusetts. Obviously, depending on where you go, certain spots are more dangerous than others, but I've always felt pretty safe. I never had anybody to try to rob me before, and yeah, I had some trouble with people, but this was all my fault because of situations that I put myself into when I was younger. Anyways, I'm walking home from my girlfriend's house in Somerville. I was bummed out because of this whole lockdown and everything, and I work at a tattoo shop, and my shop was closed because of everything that's going on. So money was really tight, and I'm smoking a stogie, and this guy walks up to me real nice as can be and asks me if he could have one. He's listening to music on his phone, and I could hear it faintly through his headphones. I said, yeah, of course, and I handed him two, and he said, thanks. And he even offered to pay, and I told him, nah, it's okay, man. And his phone just starts ringing after that. He answers it, and his phone screen starts to blink really violently after that. If I had epilepsy, I would have probably dropped and had a seizure. I heard this really weird beeping through his headphones. The guy suddenly puts his phone away and throws the cigarettes on the ground, and takes out a knife and starts talking in a whole other language. I said to him, come on, man, you're supposed to rob the guy who says no to giving you a stogie. Then he gets really aggravated, and even though I can't understand what he's saying, I could tell by his volume of his voice that he's getting angrier. So I just tell him, all right, man, take it. I wasn't about to die over $160. I take the money out of my wallet and hand it to him, and he says, no, 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 in broken English, and points to my wallet. And I'm like, you're kidding me, dude. He gestures at me to hand it over, so I do. But as that's happening, all of a sudden, he gets another phone call and he answers it. I forgot to write that the first time around the flashes on his cell phone were white, originally. I pay really close attention to the phone call because of how everything changed once he answered it before. Then he answers it the second time, but this time the phone is flashing pinkish red or some color like that. And his entire attitude and his demeanor changes completely. This guy puts the knife away in his pocket. He puts his phone away calmly and thanks me for the stogies in perfect English. And this is the part that scares me because I was terrified that this guy was like some kind of a super soldier. And I was like, what in the world is going on? The way he changed personality scared me more than him pulling a knife out on me to begin with. And I say to him, you can have my wallet and cards, it's all I got. And he says, I can have your what? And I tell him my wallets and cards. It's all I have. I don't have anything else. He then reaches in his pocket frantically looking like somebody who lost their car keys and pulls out his wallet and opens it. And he looks at me with more fear than I had when I was getting robbed. And he just threw my wallet on the floor and starts running as fast as he could. I just stood there for a few good minutes, 1 or 2, maybe more, trying to figure out what in the world just happened. I grabbed my wallet from the ground, picked it up, and put it in my pocket, and walked away not knowing what else to say or think about that very bizarre and strange situation. So for some backstory, I moved away from my hometown a few years ago for school, and I live 3 hours away from my friend's house currently. I usually drive there once a month or so to visit, and it has pretty much always taken me 3 hours to drive down, and seldomly does it take me about 2 hours and 45 minutes if traffic is not too bad. I've done this drive dozens of times, so I know the route very well. The distance between my house and my friend's house is 178 miles. A few months ago, my brother and I started driving down to our friend's house at exactly noon. As soon as I got into my car, I texted my mom and friends to let them know that we were going to come down for the weekend. The drive itself was nothing noteworthy. Traffic was lighter than normal, but as I said, nothing happened out of the ordinary. I tend to go a little bit over the speed limits, like over 70 miles per hour, or probably between 70 and 80, but not over 100. It's too dangerous for public roads with other people around. Once we arrived at my friend's house, they were confused as to why we were so early. So I checked my phone, and it was only 1:30. We made it to their house in about an hour and a half. We drove 178 miles in 1 hour and a half. That equates to an average speed of 119 miles per hour through the entire trip. Granted, I drive a sports car, but my limit on the car itself is 124 miles an hour top speed, and there was no way that I could have kept it pinned at 124 miles an hour the entire time. Cop engines would have definitely not allowed it. To say that we were surprised would be an understatement. I never use my phone while I'm driving, and we rarely look at the clock in my car, since my attention is on the road and the other drivers for safety. There was no logical explanation that we could come up with, but I know for a fact that I never went above 100 miles per hour. I never went above 80 miles per hour, to be honest with you. I knew exactly what time that we left because we sent text messages showing our friends and relatives that we were leaving, and our friends and relatives confirmed that we showed up at 1:30. The only illogical explanation is some sort of time dilation, but I say illogical since that theory is only applicable to particles traveling near the speed of light, not a car going less than 80 miles an hour.